For years, Somali pirates were the kings of the open seas, feared, untouchable, and seemingly unstoppable. But in 2009, a single decision would change everything. When they targeted a U.S.-flagged cargo ship, they made a mistake so disastrous it triggered a response they never saw coming. This is the story of the moment Somali piracy began to unravel, and the deadly force they unleashed upon themselves. Somali piracy wasn't just a crime. It was a symptom of desperation rooted in decades of hardship. Somalia, a country ravaged by civil war and economic collapse, saw its people grappling with poverty, instability, and a lack of resources. With no functioning government to enforce maritime laws, illegal fishing trawlers from wealthier nations began swarming Somali waters. These vessels hauled in tons of fish daily, depleting stocks and leaving local fishermen with empty nets. Adding insult to injury, some foreign companies dumped toxic waste in the region's waters, further devastating the marine ecosystem. For Somali fishermen, survival became a losing battle. Faced with mounting challenges, some turned to piracy as a way out. What started as a desperate attempt to protect their livelihoods soon evolved into a highly lucrative and organized operation. Small fishing boats were retrofitted with powerful engines, and crews armed themselves with AK-47s, rocket launchers, and ladders. Their strategy was simple but effective. Target slow-moving cargo ships, board them quickly, and demand ransom for the safe return of the vessel and its crew. By the mid-2000s, Somali pirates had gained international infamy. They operated primarily in the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean, some of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Their attacks became increasingly bold, with larger and more valuable vessels falling into their grasp. High-profile hijackings, like that of the Ukrainian ship MV Fana in 2008, which carried 33 tanks and heavy weaponry, made headlines worldwide. Ransom payments often reached millions of dollars, cementing piracy as one of the few profitable industries in Somalia. It wasn't uncommon for pirates to return to their villages as heroes, using their newfound wealth to build homes and support their communities. To outsiders, it looked like a story of lawless success, but beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. As the scale of their operations grew, so did the risks. Shipping companies began employing private security firms, while international naval forces ramped up their presence in the region. Pirates who once terrorized the seas with impunity now faced a growing threat. But for Somali pirates, the ultimate turning point came in 2009, when they made the catastrophic decision to target the wrong ship, the Maersk Alabama. April 8, 2009 started like any other day for the crew of the Maersk Alabama, a U.S.-flagged cargo ship carrying relief supplies to Kenya. But as the ship sailed through the dangerous waters off the Somali coast, trouble was brewing. Unbeknownst to the crew, 4 Somali pirates had set their sights on the Maersk Alabama, viewing it as a high-value target. What they didn't realize was that this decision would turn into one of the most infamous piracy incidents in modern history. The pirates approached the Maersk Alabama in a small skiff, armed with automatic weapons and a dangerous determination. Despite the ship's precautions, including evasive maneuvers and defensive measures, the pirates managed to board. It was a tense and chaotic moment as the crew realized their ship had been overtaken. However, the pirates soon discovered that taking over the ship was just the beginning of their problems. Captain Richard Phillips, the seasoned and level-headed leader of the Maersk Alabama, made a critical decision that would define the events to follow. To protect his crew, Phillips offered himself as a hostage, allowing the rest of the team to hide safely in the engine room. This act of bravery shifted the focus of the hijackers, who believed they now had significant leverage. The pirates forced Phillips into a small covered lifeboat, hoping to use him as a bargaining chip. They began making demands for a ransom, confident that they could extract millions in exchange for his safe return. But what they didn't anticipate was the swift and forceful response their actions would provoke. News of the hijacking spread quickly, sparking outrage in the United States. The idea of Somali pirates holding an American captain hostage was unacceptable, and the U.S. government wasted no time in planning its response. Within hours, the USS Bainbridge, a guided missile destroyer, was dispatched to intercept the lifeboat. The ship's arrival marked the beginning of a tense, high-stakes standoff between the pirates and the U.S. Navy. What started as a calculated move by the pirates was quickly spiraling out of their control. They underestimated the resolve of both the American government and the Navy, which was already working on a plan to end the crisis. For the pirates, this was no longer about a ransom. It was about survival. For Captain Phillips, it was a battle to stay alive in the face of unimaginable danger. The moment news of the Maersk Alabama hijacking reached U.S. authorities, it became clear this would be no ordinary negotiation. An American ship had been seized, and its captain was being held hostage in one of the most volatile regions in the world. The U.S. government knew a strong message needed to be sent, not just to the pirates, but to anyone thinking of targeting American vessels in the future. The response was swift. The USS Bainbridge, a guided missile destroyer equipped with advanced surveillance and combat capabilities, was immediately dispatched to the area. The Bainbridge, led by Captain Frank Castellano, tracked the lifeboat carrying Captain Phillips and the 4 pirates as it drifted farther from the Maersk Alabama and closer to Somali waters. The stakes were rising by the hour. As the Navy moved into position, they faced a delicate balance. On one hand, they needed to protect Captain Phillips and ensure his safety. On the other, they had to maintain control of the situation without escalating it into a full-blown international incident. The pirates, armed and increasingly desperate, made repeated demands for a ransom in exchange for Phillips's release. Unbeknownst to them, the U.S. government had already decided that negotiations were off the table. Behind the scenes, plans for a rescue operation were quietly taking shape. The Navy brought in additional resources, including elite members of SEAL Team 6, who specialize in high-stakes missions like hostage rescues. Their involvement was kept secret, heightening the tension of the already volatile standoff. For 3 days, the pirates tried to hold their ground, believing they had the upper hand. They had no way of knowing that every move they made was being monitored and analyzed by the Navy. As the lifeboat drifted aimlessly, the pirates' confidence began to waver. The Bainbridge's overwhelming presence, coupled with the pirates' dwindling resources, turned the tide against them. The Navy's strategy was meticulous and patient. They used psychological tactics to wear the pirates down, maintaining constant pressure while buying time for the SEALs to finalize their plan. Captain Phillips, meanwhile, endured his captivity with remarkable composure, understanding that the Navy's actions could mean the difference between life and death. The tension was palpable, and the world watched with bated breath. While the pirates still believed they were in control, the U.S. Navy was preparing to strike with precision and finality, setting the stage for one of the most daring rescue missions in modern history. The 3-day standoff between the Somali pirates and the U.S. Navy was a tense and precarious game of cat and mouse. With Captain Phillips held hostage on a small enclosed lifeboat, the stakes were impossibly high. Both sides knew that one wrong move could mean disaster. The pirates, initially confident in their position, quickly realized they were in far deeper trouble than they had anticipated. Surrounded by the might of the U.S. Navy, the lifeboat became a claustrophobic prison. The pirates had no escape route, no reinforcements, and dwindling supplies. Their demands for a multimillion-dollar ransom were met with silence, and the Navy made it clear that negotiations weren't an option. As the hours dragged on, tension within the lifeboat began to rise. The pirates argued amongst themselves, their confidence giving way to frustration and paranoia. Meanwhile, Captain Phillips remained remarkably composed despite the dire circumstances. Understanding the volatility of his captors, he took calculated risks to humanize himself in their eyes. He spoke to them calmly, trying to diffuse the growing tension, all while holding on to the hope that help was on its way. Outside, the Navy maintained constant pressure. They monitored every movement, keeping the pirates on edge with the sheer presence of their warships. The Bainbridge's commanding officer, Captain Frank Castellano, ordered his team to remain patient and methodical. Time was on their side, and they knew the pirates' position was weakening with each passing hour. Unbeknownst to the pirates, SEAL Team 6 had already arrived on the scene. The elite unit, known for their precision and expertise in high-risk operations, was preparing for what would become a historic rescue mission. Over the next few days, the SEALs studied the situation closely, awaiting the perfect moment to strike. The pirates, growing desperate, made a critical mistake. As their paranoia increased, they began exposing themselves by standing in the open hatch of the lifeboat. They believed they were still in control, unaware that they were playing directly into the SEALs' hands. The tension was unbearable. On the surface, it seemed like a stalemate, but below the surface, the Navy was working tirelessly to end the ordeal. Every passing moment brought the pirates closer to a devastating realization. They weren't the ones calling the shots anymore. The stage was set, and the Navy was ready to deliver the final blow. As the standoff dragged into its third day, the pirates believed they still had the upper hand. They held an American hostage, and in their minds, this leverage meant they could demand a massive ransom and walk away unscathed. What they didn't realize was that the U.S. Navy and SEAL Team 6 were meticulously planning an operation to end the ordeal, not on the pirates' terms, but on their own. The lifeboat was drifting perilously close to Somali waters, adding a new layer of urgency to the mission. If the pirates managed to reach their home turf, any chance of rescuing Captain Phillips would evaporate. Recognizing this, the Navy tightened their strategy, using psychological and tactical pressure to control the pirates' movements. By this point, the pirates were exhausted, frustrated, and increasingly paranoid. Their supplies were running low, and their confidence was unraveling. On April 12, 2009, the Navy made their move. SEAL Team 6 had spent days analyzing every detail of the lifeboat, its occupants, and the surrounding conditions. They determined that the best chance for success would come in a single, coordinated strike. The SEALs, positioned on the Bainbridge, waited for the perfect moment when all three pirates would be exposed in the lifeboat's open hatch. That moment came in the early evening. As the sun began to set, the SEALs executed their plan with surgical precision. In mere seconds, 3 pirates were eliminated by sniper fire in a display of unparalleled accuracy. Each shot was perfectly synchronized, ensuring Captain Phillips's safety. The 4th pirate, who had left the lifeboat earlier to negotiate, was captured aboard the Bainbridge. The operation was a resounding success. Captain Phillips, who had spent days in the suffocating confines of the lifeboat, was pulled to safety, unharmed but visibly shaken. The world watched in awe as news of the daring rescue spread. The Navy's precision, coordination, and restraint had turned a harrowing situation into a textbook example of tactical brilliance. For the pirates, their fatal mistake had reached its inevitable conclusion. What began as an audacious attempt to score a multi-million-dollar ransom ended in utter failure, with 3 dead and 1 captured. The message was clear. Targeting an American ship came with consequences far beyond what they could have imagined. The rescue of Captain Phillips not only marked a turning point in the fight against Somali piracy, but also demonstrated the lengths to which the U.S. would go to protect its citizens. It was the end of the standoff and the beginning of a new chapter in maritime security. The Maersk Alabama hijacking was more than just a dramatic rescue mission. It was a turning point in the battle against Somali piracy. The events of April 2009 sent shockwaves around the world, reshaping maritime security and significantly altering the course of piracy in the region. For the pirates, the fatal mistake of targeting a U.S. flagged ship had far-reaching consequences they could never have anticipated. In the immediate aftermath of the rescue, the incident became a symbol of American resolve and military precision. The world marveled at how the U.S. Navy and SEAL Team 6 had managed to save Captain Phillips with such efficiency, showcasing the unmatched skill and preparedness of the U.S. Armed Forces. The operation wasn't just a victory for the Navy. It was a warning to pirates everywhere that the era of impunity was over. For Somali piracy, the fallout was swift and severe. International outrage over the Maersk Alabama incident reignited global efforts to combat piracy. Naval patrols in the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean increased dramatically, with multinational task forces working together to secure critical shipping routes. Armed security personnel became a common sight aboard commercial vessels, and new protocols were implemented to make ships less vulnerable to attacks. At the same time, Somali pirates faced a growing series of setbacks. Their once profitable operations began to crumble under the weight of international pressure. Ships that were once easy targets were now heavily fortified, and the presence of naval forces made the seas far more dangerous. By 2011, piracy incidents in the region had begun to plummet, signaling the decline of an enterprise that had once terrorized global shipping. However, the human impact of the Maersk Alabama hijacking cannot be ignored. For Captain Phillips, the ordeal was a harrowing experience that left deep emotional scars. He later recounted his story in a memoir, which was adapted into the blockbuster film Captain Phillips, bringing even more attention to the dangers of maritime piracy. For the families of the pirates, the story was one of loss and regret. Their sons had set out to claim a ransom that could lift their families out of poverty, but instead paid the ultimate price. The incident highlighted the desperate circumstances that had driven so many young men to piracy in the first place. Ultimately, the Maersk Alabama incident became a defining moment in the fight against piracy. It was a powerful reminder of the consequences of bold but reckless decisions, and how one mistake can change the course of history forever. But the ripple effects didn't stop there. The story of Captain Phillips became a symbol of courage and resilience, inspiring a hit movie and countless discussions on maritime security. For Somali pirates, though, it was the start of a steep decline. The high seas were no longer their playground. The Maersk Alabama incident was more than just a dramatic rescue. It marked the turning point in the fight against Somali piracy. What began as a desperate attempt to claim a multi-million-dollar ransom ended in disaster for the pirates and changed the rules of the game forever. The swift and calculated response by the U.S. Navy sent a clear message. Targeting American ships came with consequences no one could escape. For the world, it was a story of resilience, precision, and the lengths nations will go to protect their citizens. For Somalia, it underscored the desperation that fueled piracy and the high cost of bold but reckless decisions. The Maersk Alabama and Captain Phillips' survival remain a powerful reminder of how one mistake can rewrite history and how justice at sea is never far away.